What's up, guys? Welcome back to the NextGen Sales Leader Podcast. My name is Ben Reed, and I'm here with Bill Stathopoulos. He is the author of Cold Email Secrets. He is also the owner and the founder of Sales Captain. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Good to be here, my man. How are you doing?
Good. So we are going to jump into everything cold email, obviously, because of the book. I'm curious, where does the book come from? How did you even come up with the book in the first place? Is there a backstory?
There's no particular backstory, if I'm being honest, and I don't think I knew I wanted to write a book. It somehow came as an idea. I was like, okay, I have all this knowledge about outbound, cold email, everything from how we're using it at Sales Captain, how I used it to recruit top name speakers at World. And I was like, okay, let's turn it into a book. I created an outline on a Google Doc, jumped on a Zoom recording, few months back to back, did the transcript, and then turned it into the book.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I feel like anybody who ventures out to create any large volume of text, I mean, this is a almost 200-page book, is a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of work. So you're saying it only took you 3 months?
No, no, no. It took me 3 to 4 months to record the first version of the book, and then post-production was the real nightmare
Did
because you have
you?
to turn the way you speak into something people can read.
Yeah, yeah. So you actually, your process was to go and actually speak into like your phone or what? How did it work?
Yeah, on a Zoom call.
Wow.
I would have my assistant, and we would log in like twice a week. And I'd be like, okay, what's the topic of the day? It's deliverability. Amazing. What do I have to say? Okay, these 5 bullets. And I would go through. But then obviously the way it sounds or it goes on paper, if you've just spoken the text, is not the same as the way we write. So I hired an editor at some point, super late in the process of publishing the book. And he was British. He made some harsh comments on top of my kind of writing, but it really helped, and it kind of shaped the outcome. I hope you've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that British editors are more critical than, say, others?
I think it was his attitude more than anything else, and the way he would comment about things. Yeah, no.
I remember when I was in college, I wrote a similar sized essay, or not essay, it was like I guess it wasn't a PhD, it was something called a BPhil, or Bachelor of Philosophy degree in political science, which is a very weird thing. But I had to, it was a 200-page thesis. And I remember the intro was like 30 pages. And I remember going into the English, like the English writing place where, you go to get help essentially. And there was a guy there and he struck me as somebody who wasn't a editor, kind of just seemed like a normal guy off the street. And I sat down and I pulled out my thick pad of paper of all my drafts, and I was so proud of it. And I was just expecting this guy to praise me about how cool it was. And then he goes and he takes the first page, flips it over, and pushes everything to the left. And he sits there and he looks and he takes a piece of paper and he covers every sentence except for the top sentence. And then he reads the first two words and he goes, "Why did you use the word?" And like we spent like an hour on the first sentence of that paper. And I remember it's a 30-page intro, and we spent the next 2 weeks on the first page. And his whole thing was to like really point out how intentional you have to be with word choice and sentence structure and the whole thing. I went through something very similar to you as this kind of like, what the hell, man? Like I thought I wrote this amazing thing.
Yeah, you have to try and not let it get to you.
Yeah.
I didn't, so yeah. But I also didn't have much time. Like I hired him, I think, 3 weeks before the book was due to be published. So I spent literally evenings and nights, like on the couch, about to pass out, editing, because I had no idea how much work it was, and I left it all for last minute.
Wow. Okay, so the book, for anybody who's Googling this, it's called Lessons from Sending 100K Cold Emails, and it's the cold email secrets from the guy who gets responses from the CEOs of Amazon, Apple, and more. So what's the backstory in terms of your background? So obviously you learned a lot before you ever wrote the book, but where does that come from? what's your career look like, and how have you started this business, Sales Captain?
Yeah, I joined my first agency about 10 years ago. A great marketing agency. So I've always been in the cutting edge of marketing. Um, Joined as a junior, left as head of growth, working with some really big brands. I had seen everything from account management to strategy to sales. Around that time, I joined that world. I had to do recruitment for the lineup, so we would get 100 top name speakers every 6 months, so twice a year. And we would have like Seth Godin, Ariana Huffington, Scott Galloway, Sir Martin Sorrell, the CEOs of super big companies in the US, from Mastercard, et cetera, et cetera. I would have to recruit them somehow. So I used a lot of the tactics that I described in this book. And then also I had a client that I was working with, helping them grow a B2B services business. We looked at what channels made sense for them. We identified that cold email should have been a good fit. We tried. First campaign was a failure. Second, third campaign, it started growing, grew to 1 million in annual revenue, thanks to cold email alone, working with some amazing brands. And we got responses from like Vivian Westwood and JCPenney and all these big names.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, with that guy who's now my co-founder, and we now run 3 businesses, we said, why don't we turn this into a business? That's how Sales Captain was born. And around that time, I was like, okay, it probably makes sense to put everything on paper. And that's how I started writing the book, as kind of like a side project.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So yeah, I'm on your LinkedIn profile right now. It says case studies from Nestle, Pixafix, Work
Yeah.
Reduce. So how did you launch the agency? Did you have previous connections, or was it all pure cold outbound and you just started closing deals and getting results and building kind of the old
It was pure cold outbound, exactly the same way that I did it with World. Like I would get all these speakers and I didn't have any connections in the space. I wasn't part of like a super big marketing agency with contacts and everything. Like I just did my research, found email addresses, and did my prospecting and my follow-ups, kind of like the traditional way.
Yeah. Were you well connected within the cold lead generation, cold email space before you got started, or?
Oh, really?
Hmm.
No, I wouldn't say so. I was aware of a few key people, but then, it grows on you. The more time you spend on it, the more familiar you get with everyone.
Yeah.
It's much different now, but we've been specifically with Sales Cup been doing it for the last 4 years now. So it's completely changed from what it was when we started.
And are you in like the standard groups like Clay Cafe and the Tuesday triggers and all that as well?
Yeah, yeah,
It's so
yeah.
interesting because like getting into this, my background was more on the chief revenue officer kind of for actual businesses that then turned into, uh, I mean, I founded several companies and then I ended up owning an agency. And so I came more from the sales operations, revenue operations side and less of the lead generation side. So I really didn't jump it fully into lead generation until a few years ago. In the Clay side stuff, really wasn't on my radar till probably early 2024, when I was
Mm.
transitioning from Apollo. And it's been fascinating to me being a part of like all these communities is how small it is. I mean, it just feels like you
Yeah.
run across the same 200 people no matter where you go on planet Earth. Do you find it to be that way, or am I wrong?
Yeah. It's a good indication that you're part of the bubble. Like the more times you keep seeing the same people, the more times you feel like, oh my God, everyone's running an outbound agency. And you kind of step away from it and you talk to your friends or your parents or your family, and they're like, what is outbound? Like what is cold email?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm part of a bubble. But yeah. Um, Once you go deep inside of it, it's like your newsletter, the webinars you attend, the people that you hang out with, people on your LinkedIn feed, people on Twitter, people in your inbox. Like it's, goes full circle.
It's interesting because like I don't know who was saying this, but we were on a webinar for deliverability. I think it was, who was it? I think it was Ken from Ottawa. And he said something like, this industry attracts the worst of the worst. That's what he said, which I thought was hilarious. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, well, it's like, if you think about it, it's like such an easy business to start, right? It's like, and I have a cold email agency myself, right? So NextGen Sales Systems. And so like, he's like, it's such an easy thing to start. If you learn some Clay, if you learn Instantly or Smart Lead or whatever the sequencer is, and you're good at sales, you can be in business. And the problem
Mhm.
is the barrier to entry is relatively low. And so he was bringing this point up because his own experience, there's two groups of people. And I actually just did a LinkedIn post on this uh, last week where I effectively said something along the lines, like maybe I could pull it up real quick. I said something to the effect of there's two types of agencies. There's ones with super high integrity, those that, really care about their clients, have great uh, expectation setting practices, really clear checklists, all the things that you need to do correctly. And then there's kind of the Wild West guys. Have you noticed that distinction between agencies, or have you not seen that deeply into them?
Firstly, I think that every type of digital agency has the same issue that it's easy to get started. Like
Mm,
social media,
mm,
paid ads, e-com.
mm,
It's easy to start an agency in general.
mm,
You only need a laptop. Some might argue that it's the same for any type of agency or consulting business. Like it's easy to get started. I would say the types of agencies and I'd say probably founders I've seen fall under three categories. The first one is the get rich quick bros.
mhm,
They don't really care about, they were the guys who followed Grant Cardone and the ecom agency and the SMMA and all that stuff. They're in it to make money. They'll usually have like crappy offers and websites and one pagers and all that jazz. They don't necessarily care about delivering. They don't care about it. Like they just care about, the end result, making money. So they'll jump at whatever is fresh. Play happens to be that, or it will be for some time. The second category is what I call the experts.
mm,
It's people who are, and there's quite a few of them, the people who are experts at Clay, outbound, whatever it might be. They start an agency, but they care more about the craft than running a business. So a lot of times it ends up being a solo founder running the campaigns with a few helpers,
mm,
and that doesn't scale and it has a lot of issues with consistency. And we're seeing that, and it's feedback from we get from clients. And then there's the third category, people who definitely love what they do. They're not in it to make money, and they're in it to grow a business, to deliver good service, to follow best practices, to create and set standards for the industry. I'd like to think and aspire that we're in the third kind of category,
mhm,
because obviously we love outbound, we live and breathe outbound. But a founder at my previous agency at some point said, you can't be, he had the background of a marketer, then became the CEO. And he said, you can't be both the marketer and the CEO and the boy genius. You have to pick. If you're the CEO, you're the CEO. So I want my team to be experts at outbound. I don't want me to be perceived as the expert at outbound, even though I am, even though by nature what we do I'm knee deep in it, but my goal is no longer for me to be perceived as the expert. It's for me to convey the message, and then our team has to be much better than I am at running outbound campaigns. That's when I feel like we are successful because that's a model that can scale.
mhm. Yeah, it's well said. I think I said something similar. There's the first stage. I didn't use the third stage, which I think I should edit this. It says the beginner bro, first or second time entrepreneur, all about appearances, sarcastic, churn and burn clients, low standards of excellence, cliquish, money oriented. And then the evolved entrepreneur is the second one, which is the open minded, easygoing, high attention to detail, growth mindset, operations oriented, high integrity person. And it is interesting because my personal take is I've also noticed that. I've also kind of, it's funny because Bill was like pointing out to me, or sorry, Ken from AutoUp was saying, he appreciates that I'm, what he says, he's like calling out the industry to raise it to a higher standard. And I'm not trying to be contrarian. I just like to be a straight shooter and just, call a spade a spade. So I have personally noticed that like it's a very emotional kind of cliquish like world, the cold email agency space. And I don't know where that comes from because I think about I've worked in the oil and gas industry for many years, and I've also worked in e-commerce and I've worked in some other like the fitness industry. And it's so interesting seeing. I'm a student of human psychology. I love Daniel Pink. I'm not sure if you've read like To Sell is Human or Drive or any of these other books. But my take is that, every little subgroup of humans has a certain culture. And I've noticed that in the cold email agency space, it tends to attract a younger group of people, kind of like the early entrepreneur bros. But then also there's this like kind of a cliquish kind of like insiders, good old boys club that has evolved. Have you noticed anything like that, or have you had any experiences like that?
Yeah, definitely. And it makes sense. Like it's people, they don't they're attracted by clay, they're attracted by the big valuation, whatever it might be every single time. And then there's the more nuanced type of entrepreneurs that spend a lot of time obsessing about the tools, about the craft, about the workflows, about what they do, about creating innovative offers, about actually serving the market. There's definitely a distinct group of people there.
Your take is that like there's a like an actual like come from motive of like what are you in it for? Are you in it for actually building beautiful workflows and processes to really solve real problems? Or are you trying to like, you know, get some quick get rich quick scheme kind of outcome that some of maybe the newer guys want to get out of it?
Yeah. And I think it's the natural evolution. Once you realize that the money doesn't by itself drive anything, once you struggle a lot, you then realize that, okay, there has to be something else. Because if you're just doing it for the money, you can't eat money. You can't be friends with money. You can't have happiness with money alone. You need friends, you need family, you need a support system, you need experiences, you need to live life.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't all just be about MRR. Once you realize that, then you kind of hopefully fall back into, okay, what do I love doing that other people have a need for, that I'm also good at, that I can get paid for? It's kind of like Ikigai, if you're familiar with the concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I remember I was working at a public broadcasting television. Apparently, they just got defunded, but this is back in like 2013-ish, 2012 or something like this. And I was just out of school, and I was the director of door-to-door canvassing for Detroit Public Television, of all places. I'm not sure if you know. I know you're over there in London, but in the United States, it's like there's Barney and Sesame Street and Mister Rogers and
Yeah.
kind of what we grew up on. And at least in the 80s and 90s, I got to meet the CEO of Detroit Public Television, and I sat in his office, and he said to me, I was like, well, what's it like to make, you make 500,000 a year or whatever he makes, even though it was public broadcasting. And he was seeing over 300 people at the studio. And I was just kind of like, well, this is really cool. This, that I get to talk to this guy. I had never met someone like him in my life. And he was like, look, there's only so many filet mignons you can eat and so many bottles of wine that you can drink. He's like, at the end of the day, he's like, do you enjoy the mission? Are you interested in the subject? And do you like the people you're working with? And he's like, everything else really doesn't matter, because it's like once you fill up your cup, it's like everything else is just noise. And that stuck with me. And I agree. It's like this game is too hard to not have some passion for it. I mean, you know how it is. It's like it's constantly changing. Gmail and Outlook aren't getting along. All of a sudden, you have some new AI tool that comes around. So,
Yeah. And it becomes harder, more expensive, more tedious, easier to fail. You have to adapt. Then you have to rebuild the process and you have to go at it again.
how do you do that? How do you stay on the cutting edge? How do you keep evolving so that you don't lose track of what's happening in the market?
I mean, we're constantly monitoring social media, newsletters, webinars, and everything that's happening. Anyone who has an opinion will evaluate it, whatever source of information we have. Again, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a SaaS platform, whether it's a newsletter, we'll jump at it, go through the information, evaluate it, look at our own experiences and campaigns, and then if need be, we'll improve. A lot of times it helps because usually there's things that happen that affect not just one agency, not just one campaign, but the market overall. So if what we're seeing aligns with what we're going through, then we test it. And if it's something that can help us, or similarly, if it's something that we've tested that we feel other people might have the same issue, then we'll release it to the market. That's how we ended up building, for example, like an AI BDR or like AI replies. which is an AI that reads all the positive replies that are coming in,
Mm,
classifies them, and then responds back to the prospect within a minute.
mhm.
Because we found out that if you don't respond fast enough, because BDRs usually respond definitely more than a few hours late, if not a few days, you drop the conversion rate. So we said, okay, seems like other people are having the same issue. We were in conversation, so we said, okay, let's build it, and then we released it to the market.
Yeah, is this one of the three companies that you have?
No, no, no. The AI BDR is just part of Sales Captain. It's like a mini SaaS tool that we've built as part of our offering.
Yep.
We have a few different things that we're working on.
Great. Well, what other cool stuff? Because I could use one of those auto reply things. My problem is that
Yeah.
it, and maybe you figured this out. I would like to see what you guys built because I've had a real problem with AI responses. And I mean, the speed delete is not the problem in terms of like, yes, it's much faster than the human and much more reliable than the human. It's the problem is that sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes you get weird answers. And that, for me, that hasn't been a challenge at small volume. But when you're sending, say, 1 million+ emails per month, there's like that small, maybe say it's only like 400 or 500 replies that are weird out of, say, whatever total there is. It's still noticeable. And so have you guys been able to solve for that?
Yeah, so the way we do it is we don't try and automate every type of reply. We first start with clear demo requests or our sales call requests, which are super easy and super templated. So we don't really have AI do much. Like most of the email replies go off of a template that just pulls data from your Calendly or a HubSpot meeting link and just sends it out. And then what happens is we'll observe how the BDRs are responding to the rest of the emails. So we compile training data and then we map out the replies into 9 different categories, including demo request, positive reply, contact me later, do not contact, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have pre-made templates that read variables specific to each project. So we have templated emails, variables for every project, and then we also train the AI on emails sent from the BDRs. So it only starts responding by itself after 2 months of training using real data. So that's how it gets um, very low numbers of hallucination, if any. And then we're constantly monitoring. So if we're seeing anything that doesn't work, we'll pause that, take over manually, and then continue running the flow.
Well, was this custom coded or is this like
Yeah,
vibe coded? Is this NAN? How are you guys doing it?
we custom coded it.
Mm.
That's the hard traditional way, which ended up being faster than either vibe coding it or using it at the end because we're using OpenAI, a few different AI models. Like essentially, we're using the right model for each of the types of works that we're trying to get. So we use different AI to classify, different AI to create the replies, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Have you did you guys have a background in software or how did you guys figure out how to do that? Just hire a third-party contractor?
Friend of a friend. We said, let's not try and deal with things that we're too deep, knee deep in.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a friend of a friend who's working on AI who's been building apps. So we said, okay, fine, let's do it together. And then, it ended up into a bigger project than we originally expected.
You said something that was counterintuitive to most people listening, but it like 100% was spot on in my experience, which is you said it was faster to custom code the old way or whatever old school way, whatever the phrase was, than to vibe code it, which is like a very contrarian take, which is like, how could it be faster than vibe coding? That's the whole point of vibe coding, right? And I completely agree that vibe coding, for anybody who's listening out there who loves Lovable or Replit or whatever tool you're using, it's my opinion, again, I'm open to being wrong here, is that that it's good for rapid iterations. It's fantastic for UI design.
Yeah,
For very simple use cases internal to your business and your workflow, it can work quite well. When it comes to like scaling to multiple orgs, or you have to have some type of authentication layer along with any level of like DevOps, which is like the whole process of like quality assurance, continuous integration, like where do you even place it on, like what platforms are you building
exactly.
on? It's just not ready for that. And so everyone who's vibe coding is like, I'm going to go to $1 billion on my vibe coded app. And I'm like, yeah, but it's going to crash after you get to your millionth line of, data within your SQL database, even if you're hooked up to say Supabase or something. So do you agree with that take, or what's your
Yeah.
perspective?
And I would say it's the same take as people saying, oh, AI BDRs will automate the whole thing. I mean, yeah, as with vibe coding, maybe eventually we'll get there. I can't doubt that
Mhm.
part. Probably AI is going to become, smarter than us and also able to self-correct, and we'll probably get there. We're not there yet. So we didn't want to build UI. We just wanted to build something really specific. We knew exactly what we were doing. The first version just had to talk to the right APIs, talk to OpenAI, etc.,
Mhm.
talk to Lemlist, SmartLead, and the tools that we wanted to.
Mhm.
So we didn't really need like much. Like the amount of time that it would take for us to learn how to vibe code and build an MVP, that just didn't compare with just hiring someone, giving them the brief, and getting it done in like 2 weeks.
Mm. So going back a little while to, the world has changed. We are moving away from the old, what I call big box platforms of Zoom Info and Apollo, although we're still probably heavily reliant on Apollo to some degree, but into this like kind of more fragmented multi-source world with low code tools and Clay and whatnot. What do you see as the current trend, like in terms of where we've been and where we're going? How are you looking at the world?
It's an interesting question. We're focusing our entire uh, talk at HubSpot on that exact point. Our big thesis is outbound is now inbound, in the sense that what was a manual process done by BDRs in a one-to-one way using Zoom Info tied on top of a HubSpot and traditional tools. Sales now, Zoom Info and HubSpot was like the default tech stack. That no longer works. Same as you used to be able to send 500 emails from a Google inbox, from Google Workspace inbox. That doesn't work anymore. So what has happened is outbound has become more expensive, but it's also become easier to scale. So essentially it's become a one-to-many channel, because whether it's 50 or 100 inboxes, one person can now, with the right tools, reach out to thousands of prospects every single month, if not hundreds of thousands. So a lot of shifts are happening, including the fact that first touch point with a new prospect doesn't have to be done by an actual human. Outbound is becoming a one-to-many channel. Outbound is usually better understood as a channel within marketing and not within sales, because the principles have now changed. It's become a channel that requires multiple iterations, deep data expertise, additional skills like data scraping, AI copywriting, understanding of different AI models, which is not the traditional kind of like sales capability and playbook. So we're seeing these go-to-market slash RevOps teams being built either within sales, within marketing, somewhere in between. The nice thing about it is the same tools that allow us to be more flexible with how we do outbound also allow us to connect marketing and sales in really nice ways, because we can now get data from the CRM, process it in the marketing department, run campaigns, give the results back to the sales team.
Mhm.
So essentially, Clay is acting like, but it's kind of code name that we have internally. We are calling it glue, because it allows you to kind of tie different pieces together and have a unified experience.
Mhm.
Also, the other kind of last amazing thing is that marketing can now contribute actual pipeline. Like we know that we can vet prospects in real life or in real time using AI, using APIs, and we can also run campaigns to the ICP, to the exact people we want to target, and actually deliver positive replies and actual pipeline to sales. So I think it's like a lot of amazing things
Mhm.
are happening at the same time.
So if you had to come into like a new business, and let me give you a couple options. Do you focus on kind of large scale cold outbound campaigns with email? Like I'm talking about like a million plus per month per client, or do you focus more on the tighter TAMs, more targeted, bespoke kind of account based approach? What's your sweet spot, or do you do both?
We prefer campaigns that can scale a little bit better,
Hmm.
because outbound still as a channel is a better fit for that.
Hmm.
If you're going more EBM, you still need some of the traditional elements of that process, which includes creating the content, being more strategic about the account, still including more info about the prospects from your CRM or anything else that you might have. you still can get plenty of help. Like one of the things that we do, for example, is like tiered campaigns. So you can go through your time using tools like Clay, and then you can score every lead, a process called lead scoring, and then tier one prospects, maybe the top 5 or 10%, based on company size, tightness, closeness to your ICP. You can deliver them to the sales team where they can have a more ABM type of approach, and then the rest of the prospects you can run outbound at scale. So you don't have, it doesn't have to be either or. You can do both and do it in the most meaningful way. And I think that's also amazing. And it, again, the best answer to that question.
Mhm. So how would you, like, if you had to go into a business and let's say there was a certain set of things you were going to set up, what would you say is like the ideal setup for a business who wants to go through this transition from the called the old way to the new way in what you're describing?
I mean, it would depend on how they're going to market right now and what their current sales setup looks like, whether they have a sales team, BDR team, AE team, and how they're structured that way. You can still empower BDRs, like you can still create the data at scale and then hand them over to the BDRs to run campaigns, even though I think that's starting to go away.
Mm-hmm.
BDRs are reserved, again, as we were discussing, for following up on prospects who have engaged, and instead of having to manually knock on every single door, like they can now be there when the person opens the door and says, "Hi, what is this about?"
Mm-hmm.
So the big shift that we're seeing is that trend. The other one is you can also use data from the CRM and you can validate, enrich, cleanse data in real time. So that's another really good touch point there. So it's enabling BDRs, making sure that they're not doing tedious work. The second part is cleaning up the CRM, making sure you always have good data. You can also automate a lot of other processes by looking at what other channels they're running. So, for example, if you do SEO and you have website visitors, you can now enrich the companies, de-anonymize them as we're calling it, and then can actually reach out to your ICP, like prospects who match your ICP. Not everyone, obviously, from SEO and Google or AI search will match your ICP. Those prospects that do match, you can actually reach out to. If you have web forms, you can qualify them in real time. The prospects who are qualified, you can hand them over to sales. So the other part is like taking over. If you're running paid ads, again, why aren't you de-anonymizing the people who are not converting and then reaching out? So if you're running social media and you have people engaging, you can scrape in real time people who engage with your content, people who visit your LinkedIn profile, and actually reach out. Make sure they belong to your ICP and reach out. So this is the second step, which the part called inbound led outbound.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing is outbound at scale. So it's not just, oh, we're running automated campaigns. There's automated campaigns, inbound led outbound, which is fed by signals from across your company. And then it's enabling the SDRs, RevOps to work around the CRM, and how do we make sure that we're maximizing the marketing spend and campaigns that the company's running.
So within, and this is mostly happening through Clay, I would assume, in terms of the orchestration of pulling the signal data and tying into the CRM. What what signal data do you think is, or what sources for the signal data you think are performing the best currently? Right now, we're recording this in August 2025. I'm sure this will change, but what what's working for you right now?
It heavily depends on the industry and
Mm.
also what kind of data matters. Like we have a client that's like legal AI. We look at a lot of M&A data. So, we're using specialized data sources. And I think that's the other thing that has changed, right? We used to think that ZoomInfo is like the holder of truth, and that you have access to this database and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
For this client, for example, we use Precken, which has access to M&A deals. So we literally go through there every single day, get the news on what's happening with different companies, and then we reach out to the ones that match our ICP. Or for a different client, we're doing local lead generation or local outbound to massage shops and companies like that, tattoo shops. So we scrape Google Maps, we scrape TripAdvisor, we scrape local business listings. So the data sources pretty much depend nowadays on what is the target audience and where can you actually find them. If your prospects are on LinkedIn, obviously you should be leveraging that. But again, in the case of like the local business, they're not on LinkedIn. They're on Google Maps, they're on Booking.com, they're on TripAdvisor. The beauty of it is you can use data, you can use tools that allow you to scrape those platforms and then import the data into Clay enrich that data and use it as part of your campaigns, even if it's not included as a native source within Clay.
Mhm.
And that's obviously if you're more bespoke about your campaigns. But again, it'll always depend on what makes the most sense. If you're attending a conference, the conference app, scrape it, get the data, enrich it with, prospect and company data, filter it out, reach out.
Mhm.
If you have a lot of website traffic, you should be leveraging that. If you have a CRM with old deals, people who are changing jobs and, might be carrying really large deals with them, reach out to them and bring them back with a new contract under their new company. If you have, old employees, reach out and see if you can do the same. So it will really depend on the stage of the company, the industry that they're in, and what are the big things that are happening in that industry at any given moment.
Mhm. Do you have any particular sources of signal data from like a place where people could subscribe to that you trust at this point? I know obviously it depends upon the source or the ICP and the industry in question, but are there any particular like you're like, oh my God, this data is just pristine, it's amazing, it's helping me in ways that I didn't expect?
I'd say Trigify and Confluence are two amazing tools to get access to LinkedIn data in ways that weren't doable before. So you can monitor existing content, existing posts, posts of influencers, posts that you're doing or your team is doing, monitor your LinkedIn profile visitors in real time, which I think is amazing. We then have tools like RBDB who not only de-anonymize company data, but if you have US visitors, they can also find LinkedIn profiles. That's quite interesting. It does not always accurate, but the times that it is, it's spot on because you have the actual decision maker and you don't have to guess who it is. Lead Magic is interesting for job postings and other types of job related triggers. Yeah, these I think would be the ones that come to mind, like the ones that we, typically would go to
Mhm.
if we're running a campaign.
It's for anybody listening, I mean, for those that are in the know, the GTM engineers of the world, the other agency owners who we do have some people that listen, but there's a whole group of people, especially, in the marketing manager role, the entrepreneur role, even the sales manager, like the chief revenue officer role, where a lot of these ideas, they're still kind of living in the dated, older world of the Zoom Info kind of big box platform providers. And so we're talking about signals this and signal that, and they may have been exposed if they used to follow Sixth Sense, and that old school kind of way of doing it. But uh, it's interesting because the access to the signals is, I think, only going to get better. And ironically, it's kind of like at the same time, say, the iOS 14 update or whatever it was that, slapped us back in the day that killed all access to what's happening on the cell phone for Apple is an example of how we're losing access. But at the same time, with AI web scraping and these tools coming online, we're somehow also gaining access. So I guess I'm just thinking out loud here is like having people think through the signal data of like what is meaningful and what isn't meaningful and why should I have that or should I not have this, I think is a deep subject that people are going to have to explore because I think we're now seeing superpowers that we didn't have before, right? And so I think everyone on planet Earth.
It's the renaissance of B2B data. Same we digital used to be all about direct to consumer, so Facebook ads, all that, it was all about e-com. It was all about like individual users. B2B never had good data, and that, had to do with a lot of reasons. The tools were not there. It was not that easy to scrape. We weren't online that much. The directors weren't there, or they hadn't penetrated to that extent. We're now at an era where honestly, like it's the golden era, the renaissance of B2B data because it's accessible. You can scrape it. And again, you can get down to a level of relevance, not personalization, because personalization is like oftentimes tied to where you went to school or if you have a dog or crap like that. But like the actual relevance, like, hey, you belong to this Facebook group or this LinkedIn group or this community, or you follow that influencer, which actually ties back to behavioral data, to actual problems in your business. And we're able to use that data in ways that allow us for outbound to feel like at the same level as like inbound, because it's tied to what's going on in your business. HubSpot coined the term inbound and outbound marketing. At some point, they made kind of like an update. They published a blog post where they were saying like paid ads are now considered an inbound channel because the amount of data you have on B2C users is enough for your ads to be relevant, and ads were indeed relevant. We're now seeing the same thing with outbound and B2B data simply because we can now harvest it. Not the same for everyone. It's true for the ones that are, are aware of the shift that's happening and what's now doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a distinction, as you said, between personalization, signal, and context. And I think they're all kind of part and parcel of the same idea, which is we want better messaging that's more relevant for people that we're outreaching to. But I remember a friend, I bring him up a lot on this show, a guy named Devin. He's the CEO of a company called Group Raise. And they were sending cold email before it was cool. This is like circa 2014, 2015, 2016, where they constructed their own sequencer and they were doing some crazy stuff, and what they would do is they would build a big database with a lot of manual research, kind of some web scraping, but they have a team of 20 Filipinos and their entire job was to go find context. They specifically focus on the restaurant industry. And so their whole thing was it's a marketplace of matching nonprofits with restaurants, and the nonprofits, when they have an event, it's a very particular timing. When there's an upcoming event and they want to do a fundraiser for the nonprofit, and then there's restaurants that have open inventory because it's off hours and they want people to come in, and they want to match up the supply and demand of open inventory on the restaurant side with this demand for a place to have cool fundraisers. And it was called Group Raise. And so what they would do is they would go do all this research on when the events were happening. So they would go on and scrape the websites and find out like all the different local events for the fundraisers. And then they would also go to the local restaurants within 5 miles of the place it was supposed to be held, or the nonprofit. And they would go do this very sophisticated kind of big data across the entire country with every restaurant and every nonprofit every single day and match them up. And they'd say, Frank's Deli, did you know that Bobby's nonprofit, whatever it is 2 miles down the street is throwing a, Girl Scouts fundraiser, and they happen to be trying to host it at 12 o'clock, right when you're open inventory, or right when you don't have a bunch of people in there. Would you want us to connect you? Maybe we could facilitate something. But it was this very specific, there was no AI. There was no real, it was kind of personalization, but it was more context. It was like, you're 5 miles down the street, it's happening at this date. These guys have this event on the 12th. It looks like from your prior menu, your open table records, that you don't have much activity there, that kind of stuff, and it crushes. And that's how they do all of their marketing. It's pure cold email, but it's not signal data. I guess it's kind of signal. It's signal in the sense that there's an event coming up. But other than that, it's context, what, where, who,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. We used to do the same thing using a team in Asia, out of Asia, before Clay, up until middle of 2023. And then when we saw what's feasible with AI, we had to literally change the structure of our entire team and rebuild the data team to be proficient on Clay and data scraping tools, versus in the past, they would literally have a Google sheet with qualification criteria in every column, which was like similar to a Clay table. They would go to the website and they would say, oh yeah, it's a B2B service business. And yes, it's a photo studio. And yes, the pricing is on the website. It's enterprise, da, 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 da. They have a contact form, da. And they would, we would end up with similar type of relevance in our campaigns simply because we had kind of like that secret element, which, was easy to replicate, but no one was doing it in outbound even, back then. And then when Clay came around, we said, we don't need humans to do it anymore. We can build the prompt, we can identify the qualification data, and then we can let do AI do the grunt work. And obviously AI is better at classification and data analysis versus copywriting, at least up until August of 2025.
Yeah, it's funny because this gets back to the first way we started the conversation around like the people that are kind of driving towards this trend, right? It's like the Shopify trend or the social media marketing trend, which is like, oh, look at this. There's this $1 billion unicorn technology that's changing the way something was done. looks easy or looks kind of trendy, or my buddy just is doing it. Let's jump on in. Uh, and I think the thing whether it's potential clients of your business or my business, or it's people that want to get into the space and just see it as the hot thing, is they don't realize that like this isn't fundamentally changing human behavior. We're still just trying to connect with human beings. And in order to do that, we need better information so we can build better lists, so we can reach out at the right time. And so there's a question of list building, there's a question of deliverability, which I think we can get into in a moment. You brought that up about the book. Um, and so, but it's actually just a lot of data management. I mean, realistically speaking, that's what we're talking about here. It's
Yeah.
having some sense of human psychology and being able to be kind of an anthropologist, but then the rest of it is big data and technology and integrations. And it's not, I don't think anybody can just jump into this and be successful. I mean, I think you have to be really interested in data. You have to be very interested in, systems and tools. And it's quite technical the further you go into it. So anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I'd like to turn to, what do you think's going on with deliverability? Or is cold email dying? Where are we at right now in your mind?
Yeah, I don't think it's anything new. The fact that keeps getting harder and harder to reach the inbox, to reach the primary tab. We first saw it with LinkedIn years ago, where you used to be able to send I remember the first like growth hacks from my growth hacking days, when everyone would connect with each other and limited connection requests. Like it went crazy for a couple of years. LinkedIn shut it down, and we now get, 200 to 400 connection requests a month, which is nothing. And then the same thing started happening with email as well. Like Google realized that a lot of people are using it for spam. Obviously, it's in Google's best interest to minimize spam, because it wants its users on the inbox, and it wants them to only be seeing emails that make sense to them. So, guess what? Google's also using AI, but it's using it to identify that, hey, Ben here, Bill, has sent the exact same email with almost zero variation to 100 people within an hour. Well, even if it's from a different domain, it's probably automated. So let's, put it on the spam folder. So deliverability has been getting harder. Microsoft inboxes are, really, really, especially harder to get into. The cost of infrastructure has increased threefold to four times, based on what it was literally like a year back. And it seems like it keeps increasing, especially if your campaigns aren't resonating. Like if your campaigns aren't finding relevance, if your offer is not fine-tuned, um, outbound kind of like throws you out of the picture real hard, but making it so that you become undeliverable like really fast.
What I've seen is, because of my business RevOps, which is a data management platform that connects to Clay, I've gotten to see into a bunch of cold email agencies. So we have 30 cold email agencies that I'm working with right now, and I get to see their data. I get to see what their problems are, starting to see the campaign performance and what works and what doesn't work. And we have two categories of clients. We have the cold email agency on one side, and then we have the people that are just kind of like, I'm going to do it myself. And what's so funny, and this is like so counterintuitive, is that the people doing it themselves used to have an agency and they got burnt out by the agency because the agency sucked, because they were just mass blasting. They didn't really care about the person's offer. They weren't taking care of the data. They were sending to the wrong prospects. I just got off a call with a guy today who's a client of mine, and he said, we used to work with 3 different cold email agencies and we won't hire another one. We do it all in house. And I'm like, show me your campaigns. It was on Instantly. And this guy's getting 6% reply rates. And I'm like, what the heck? And it's like with 40% interest reply rates. And I'm like, show me another cold email agency that consistently gets that result. It's like, it's mind blowing. And then we're talking to this other guy, his offer, this one guy that is running his own campaigns. I think he's on Bison. He specifically has an offer where he's writing, ironically, he's writing books for founders. And so he goes out and his offer is, hey, do you have a story to tell as a founder? I will ghostwrite your book for you and publish it for you. And he does all of the cold email himself. He used to have somebody do it. He got burnt out by it. And he shows me, and it's 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 reply rates with, again, 20, 30% interest rate reply rates. And he's doing $1 million a year completely by himself as a one-man band sending cold email. And I'm just like blown away. And I'm like, first off, how did you guys figure out how to do this? And they were like, well, we failed a lot. And they, just like us cold email agencies, started to see what works. But they specifically for their offer, they found out, like, okay, for example, local businesses, you can't send more than 10 emails per inbox. And in fact, this guy said, as soon as I send over 10 emails per inbox, my deliverability gets crushed and I don't get results. And so I'm actually scaling towards 5 emails per inbox, just as an example. And he's like, we send at a very slow velocity. And I'm like, that's counterintuitive to me too, as well, because I'm used to sending like, 1 million emails, every month. And he's like, no, he's like, we purposely like really like throttle the rate limit of how much we're sending out. And we'll do like maybe only so much per hour. And so it's like these kind of counterintuitive ideas that are being
Yeah.
kind of pushed by non-agencies, and they're the ones crushing, it's hilarious.
Yeah, but the important part in what you mentioned is the offer. And what we've seen again and again is we can have really good targeting. In fact, our team spends a lot of time reviewing the prospects manually, even after they've been vetted by AI, because we want to make sure that we don't miss on any random or rogue prospects. So we tweak the prompts and the lead generation and list building process quite a bit for at least like 1 to 2 months before we've said we've nailed this ICP. And we'll obviously A/B test with the messaging even within the week of running the campaigns. But the other element that you can't necessarily influence yourself completely as an agency is the offer. So I would say there is a little bit of an art to identifying offers that work. There are a few key elements that make an offer work, but it also takes going to market and being agile with adapting your offer if you're not getting the replies you want. And I'd say the best tool in that is the negative replies, because the replies by themselves carry a lot of intel. They carry the objections that you can then use to tweak your offer by identifying the regular types, like the standard types of objections. Usually it's I'm doing it in-house, I'm doing it with an agency, it's not a need right now. So if you're able to identify, okay, why are they saying no? You can then tweak your offer, and that's what everyone should be doing to make it into an outbound ready offer. Because what a lot of businesses don't get is the way you sell through word of mouth and inbound and referrals is not the way you sell through performance channels. And outbound ultimately is a performance channel. It requires an offer that's tested for a cold audience that doesn't know you, that doesn't trust you. So you have to pique their interest by saying something that's either ridiculous or outrageous or making a really big claim, throwing a really big guarantee, whatever it might be. There's a few different elements there, so that when they actually engage with you, you have the opportunity to actually unravel and start building the trust.
So offer ideation is one component, and there's all these variables that we can track, right? Subject line, hook, problem statement, solution statement, call to actions, offers. One thing that I have found lacking in the sequencing tools like Instantly or Bison or any of the tools, this isn't a particular slight at any of them, plus 5, Smart Lead, whatever, is that variable tracking and A/B analysis, A/B testing and multivariate analysis of those results by campaign is really limited. How do you solve for that? I know that like testing one thing to another thing, one campaign to another campaign isn't too difficult, but when you're looking at the big data across, say, all campaigns, how do you handle that currently?
The way we do it is we build at the beginning of every month or at the end of a month for the beginning of the next month, we build what we call a campaign plan, which is pretty much like a Google sheet, like our war sheet with all the NISs, ICP, data sources, messaging, and offer experiments that we want to run.
Mm-hmm.
We label them, like we give them a campaign code name, and then we test those campaigns. Obviously, they also include some A/B tests as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on how many positives, like the positive reply rate from every campaign, we're able to tell, okay, this ICP and this offer work better than the other ICP and the other offer.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're doing it. It's manual. It's not, easy to do. It gets complicated if you have multiple ICPs or if you want to test too many things at the same time.
Right.
And I don't have like a better answer, but
Hmm.
at least like we're doing it and we're keeping track of it, which allows us to improve over
Well,
time.
you're better than most. I mean, most people don't do any type of testing like that. And that's what's so interesting that I've been seeing in the market is like, if you go into like conversion rate optimization for say an e-commerce platform and where you have very tight margins, your unit economics are like, basically like super slim. Everybody has this concept of ROAS, return on ad spend, and they're like, well, my cost to acquire was $80, but my average order value was 95, and so I'm going to break even on the front end, and I'm going to upsell 3 more packages and hope my LTV. They'll say stuff like that. Whereas like in the outbound world, I think it's such an immature market with they don't think in terms of this kind of more advanced analysis. And so I think that the terminology of like ROAS doesn't exist for outbound. I've coined a term called ROO, which is return on outbound. We have a whole spreadsheet and calculator for that. But those types of acronyms aren't commonplace. It's not like people say, "Oh, what's your ROO?" You know, like or like whatever. Maybe this is the place where people will look back and say, "Oh, remember that ROO? God, that's where it started." But I'm just interested in this because I can say in my own campaigns, especially with AI, it's like there's a fundamental question of how do you test variables when some of the variables are changing every single iteration. In other words,
Hmm.
it's like if you have a fully AI written piece of
Yeah.
copy, how do you test? And the only answer I've come up with is you track your prompt and you track your LLM, and then you A/B test against the prompt and the LLM. But it's a different world. It's not as clean as it used to be. You know.
No. And it's probably not going to be the same because AI is going to be eating up bigger and bigger parts of the campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's, we're personalizing maybe one sentence or one variable, like there's a specific intent. It doesn't change it that much. But then you also have tools like Twain, which are actually really good for deliverability because it copyrights a unique message for every prospect. And if more than 60 to 70% of your message is unique,
Mm-hmm.
for every different prospect, it's a lot easier to bypass spam filters and land on the inbox. Actually, this is my favorite use case for AI copywriting. It's not relevance per se. It's like, bypassing spam filters by having unique messages. But yeah, A/B testing in that sense is hard to do with AI. Most likely, we're going to have to change the way we track change and testing when we're talking about like AI doing the testing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's already a black box by itself in how it creates the messaging and how it creates the output. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to also track. Maybe there will be a tool eventually that tracks AI experiments that will be able to decode how the AI
Mm-hmm.
was able to create those variables and how it was able to create the output and then give us kind of like the insights. So like this specific route works best for your
Mm-hmm.
campaigns.
So we're actually trying to do that at RevOps right now, my software company. So what we do is at instantly or any campaign, you can track campaign variables, and so what happens is that can be passed into a central database, and as long as you persist any campaign variable to a reply, so it's like reply occurs, you put it into a database, then you can tie that reply also back to the campaign and any variable that is associated with it. And so
Yeah.
then over the course of time, you can start to run this. I think where the AI would come in the future is like AI start to become the mad scientist, and they start saying,
Yeah.
well, I think based upon all these experiments, the next variable, they're going to have analysis where it's like, okay, there's these 5 variables, and maybe it's something different than hypothesis or a subject line, hook, problem statement, the standard ones. And maybe it's something we haven't thought of, but they're going to say, of all the variables that matter, if you change this particular variable, this is what has the biggest impact. Most people will call that offer right now. But maybe it's like, well, actually, it's these 3 things, and it changes over time, and it's going to be reading like, it's going to be constantly changing as it like learns. But it's like you need to have tremendous amount of data, which cold email is perfect for, You need to have access to the right information, and you have to be able to have a strategy to track it. So we're, at least we're trying to do that at RevOps. But the AI part of it's very interesting. It makes me think of the movie Ex Machina. Have you seen that movie?
Hmm. Yeah.
Where he like he's like uh talking to the guy, and he's like, well, I know your pornographic profile because it's like I've seen what you you actually like tall blondes, that are into whatever, because I've actually scraped all your data. And I feel like to some degree that's where we're gonna go. Where it's like the AI copywriting isn't just writing copy because we think it has good tone or has a certain uh, reading level. It's because it actually has read that person's entire post and knows what keywords that person actually says, and uses their own keywords against them.
Yeah, but that's only good for a small number of prospects. That's the bullshit I don't buy. Like, yeah, oh, amazing. We'll personalize every message based on the person's LinkedIn, content. How many people post on LinkedIn? 5, 10%? How many people in the world are on LinkedIn? If you try and do outbound into any single industry that is not online, or that is a local business, there's no even, owner data. Like, who's the owner of the business? You can't find it. So yeah, amazing. Like, it's good for hypey LinkedIn posts. We'll post about it every once in a while. It's good to know what's doable, but we're not there yet. I get it that in a lot of cases, like, you can do that, especially if you're targeting, let's say, creators, like if you're targeting people on TikTok, if you're targeting companies running ads because they have public info, if you're targeting companies doing SEO, all their data is available. So there's like amazing use cases. For me, personalizing on that level, I personally don't find it useful.
Mm.
Like, I'd much rather build a lot of smaller campaigns, which include like 100 prospects. And then the email is like tied specifically to that group of people and a specific behavior or
Mm-hmm.
trait that they have in common versus trying to do all these sequences with AI. Because, yeah, sure, you can do that, but some outbound is getting paid every single variable that gets created. So in your RU equation, why would you make it more expensive than it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
when you can get the same outcome with a dumber campaign that's actually hitting the mark
Mm-hmm.
because it was written to actually make sense?
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah.
So,
And to be clear,
yeah,
I'm not
sure.
saying that we should do that. I'm saying that I kind of went off the reservation there, and I was thinking more in terms of like a future sci-fi world, like 20 years from now, where it's like there's a chip in our brain and it's reading our world. What's funny is
I
that
think at that point we'll probably not gonna be doing sales ourselves. Like, I
mm,
think at that point you'll work with an AI to create a brief for you. It will be doing its own outreach. It'll have its database. It'll be reaching out to the relevant companies, talking to their AI, understanding what it is that they do the RFP process by itself, and come back to you and say, "Oh, here are your 3 options. These are your list of criteria. This is how every company matches it. I've cross-referenced it with their referrals. I've had like calls or whatever we're gonna be calling it in the day." So, I think human experience, human touch, and authenticity are going to start to matter a lot more because people are going to now start faking, companies, case studies, like content, whatever it is out there. So the nature of B2B selling, I think, is going to drastically change, probably going back to its roots, which was about, brand awareness
hmm
and building trust and building content and actually showing up every single time.
hmm
Instead of like, oh yeah, we just created this hype and it's, the hype or the trend of the month, or we created an Instagram profile full of AI content.
it's I actually agree. I think that what's working for us is no AI. We don't use any AI on our best copy. It's a little bit of light spin tax, uh, but sometimes we don't use any spin tax. It sounds crazy, but it's like
Yeah,
we started testing the assumption, which is like for when it was super hot and like hypey this time last year. I was like AI everything, and we were kind of like, you know what, like we're spending so much money on Clay credits and like then using the
exactly.
API credits, and I'm like, what if we just don't use AI? What happens? And we ran the campaign and we got like a whole like 25% lift on reply rate. And I'm just like, okay, you
Yeah.
know. So I'm with you.
Yeah, because the other thing is, up until today, you still have to review every single line of copy that the AI has created.
Right.
And it makes copywriting harder because the rest of your message has to resonate with that single line that AI has written. And I'm not doubting that you can have like intro lines or one of the things that we like is we call it the AI variable personalization. So instead of trying to personalize the whole message, you'll try to guess the company's exact industry or the company's ACP. And there's really nice ways you can embed that in the message. But at the end of the day, like if you're testing something for the first time, do you really want to spend AI credits reaching out to, like, I don't know, 10,000 prospects in order to then have an offer that doesn't work from the get-go? So it's like you've wasted all this money for what? Same with intent signals. Like you can't realistically have, and because it's not the intent signal anymore, you can't have intent signals and a lot of prospects generated from those signals at the same time. So by definition, if you're trying to test what offer works, what messaging works, you can't have the first versions of your campaigns be based on intent signals. They have to be volume campaigns where you can get feedback from the market, where you can reach out to significant volumes of audiences, get negative replies, optimize your copy, and then you can say, okay, where can we find more people like that that maybe are, more ready to buy, whether they're in our CRM, in our website, etc. So there was this big hype about intent signals as well, but if you look into it, like it has specific um, types of like cases where it's useful, and a lot of times where it's just like a big bubble
Mm-hmm.
that people are inflating.
Mm-hmm.
It can be super meaningful if you know who you're selling to, what your ICP is. So if you're a new startup, like, and you're like, oh, we're gonna use intent signals. No,
Yeah, exactly.
for God's sake,
Yeah.
no, don't do that. I made the rant on LinkedIn about it.
Yeah, well, I in my school group, I have a community and I have a whole classroom section on offer creation. And the first thing I tell everybody, I'm like, look, like if you don't know what your offer is and you don't have product market fit and you don't have messaging market fit, then you cannot do any real automated large scale outbound without completely just either making yourself look like a fool, completely burning your TAM, or just pissing off
Yeah.
everybody. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the best way to do it, in my opinion, is I love the book, The Mom Test. It's a free PDF online. Anybody can Google. And it's just like, go come up with a hypothesis of your top 3 pain points and then lead with hey, I'm a founder starting a company, or I have a new beta that I'm launching. I just love your feedback on what I'm building. I'm not selling anything. Would you be willing to talk to me? And every time I've launched a business, that is what's gotten me my first 10 to 20 clients. And I jump on a call. I don't assume I know everything about them. I literally ask them the mom test questions, which is, what's the biggest thing you think about every day? What's your number one problem? How are you solving it right now? Is that working for you? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And then when you have 20 or 30 of those conversations, you get all these beautiful keywords, and you can like literally just take that information. And now with AI, you could actually analyze the top trends. For me, I just read it. I look, okay, this is you pull out the pieces of it. And then it's like, okay, maybe you can then go automate like a lightweight, like LinkedIn outbound campaign and see if some of those messages are resonating. But for me, I'm just like, with anybody who just wants to jump into the cold email deep end, I'm like, guys, like, did you even know what your messaging is? Do you know what like the basic keywords are that work? So I'm with you. I think that's the problem with
Yeah.
what's happening is everyone thinks cold email is just this magic button you push, and it's not. You know?
Yeah. And to your point, I think ego and hustle culture has really made everyone want to sell. Like, whereas if you're just starting out, it's okay to say, I don't know what my audience is, or like my best tip for campaigns. Like, if it's not working out, reach out to influencers and get some time. Reach out to people in the industry and don't pitch them your product. Pitch them in interviews. Like, say, okay, I want to learn from you. I'm building something in the space. I want to understand it a little bit better. I respect you. I respect your background. Jump on a 15-minute call with me, and I might be able to share something that I'm working on. And if it works out, you might actually end up selling as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
But by first going and like, oh, I have to sell. They told me I have to sell. They told me I have to send out cold emails and it's going to work. And the founder-led sales and all that, like by having this kind of hustle mentality where you're only going for a sale, and an arrogance, I would say as well, because you're seeing it fail and you continue doing the same thing because someone told you have to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, get some feedback, take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if you don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
don't have, the fake it till you make it mentality sometimes does hurt us, because when we don't know, we don't know, and you don't know what you don't know typically. And finding the sales, like the lingo of your market, the keywords that they use, the big problems that they have, is the key ingredient for a campaign succeeding. It's why we now hesitate to take on clients that don't know their exact problem
Mhm.
that their market is facing, because we know that in 3 to 4 months they're going to be coming back at us and saying, "Oh, we're not seeing ROI. Let's stop working together. Outbound is not working." And we know perfectly well it's because they don't know their audience, they don't know who they're selling to, they don't know how to pitch it, and there's nothing that we can do about it. We can be upfront about it with them. We can say we're willing to run this experiment, but because you haven't done it before, you need to be willing to change your offer, to go into feedback campaigns. We call it the experts panel, reaching out to experts instead of reaching out to your target audience and actually getting feedback
Mhm.
when it's all working out.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that, to your point, it's an arrogance, but I think it's an expectation problem too, which is people don't realize, especially new founders, they don't realize how much research it really takes to get messaging right. They think it like just happens overnight or even within a few conversations. And that's why I kind of have the like, it's kind of an overstatement, but the 1,000 conversation requirement, which is like, for me, every time I've gone into an industry, it has taken me what I call the 1,000 conversations, where it's like I land on the ground. Like, for example, I used to work in the oil and gas industry, and we heard through the grapevine we were in the wrong market, so we had to be in Midland, Texas. This was like circa 2015. We fly into Midland, Texas, and we meet a guy at a cigar bar. I remember I smoked a cigar that day and I almost died. It was like literally like the strongest cigar I've ever had in West Texas. But it was like we had no clue what we were talking about. We were selling a piece of software to people that we didn't understand. And this guy's like, why don't you go and just like drive with my nephew's son or something like that? And we're like, sure. And so he's taking us around in this beat up old pickup truck. And he's like, well, that's a battery. And that's what a pump jack is. And there was all these like things. Oh, that's a coiled tubing unit. And that's actually a roustabout truck. And like these types of words that meant nothing to me at the time. But it took me then another couple of years to be taken seriously in that industry. Same thing with like my company RevOps, where it's like I couldn't begin this time last year. I couldn't begin to have conceived of the problems that RevOps solves for, because I first had to go send 5 million, 10 million cold emails before like I understood the problems that I was dealing with. So I just think that like if somebody said to me like, what's the number one piece of advice would you give like a brand new entrepreneur? I'd be like, just get ready to spend a year or two just really deeply understanding your ideal customer without feeling the need to like scale to the moon, like go raise $1 bazillion and like start selling. Um, that's why cold email is really only really good for people that, in my opinion, that really have message market fit, have a really large TAM. There's clear demand in the market. It's easily explainable over to some degree, and the people that you're trying to reach out to are actually receptive to cold email. You know, um, it's a very particular crowd. It's not for everyone, in my opinion. Are you doing any LinkedIn?
Yeah, yeah, we do it as part of all campaigns. Obviously, he has to be that the industry has to be in LinkedIn. But if you're reaching out to marketing agencies, anyone in advertising, like anything on those in those kind of areas, um, people are on LinkedIn and they're having conversations. They're aware of it, so it's definitely worth doing. It works really well for us as a channel, not for every one of our clients, but the ones that are in the ad tech and martech space, it works really well for.
I was talking. Do you know Alfie from Prosp by any chance?
No,
So he's the founder of Prosp. He was actually on one of the other episodes, and I was talking to the other day, and he has this new way. I don't know how he's doing it, but he gets multiple Sales Navigator accounts for half the price. And he's able to then connect one profile to multiple Sales Navigator accounts. And I don't know if this is completely black hat, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe we can
it's probably black hat.
we can put, yeah, probably.
Oh, should we not talk about it?
Let's not talk about it.
Okay, all right, got it.
People can DM us. We can have the rest of the chat
Yes, if you want the
over
secret
in LinkedIn.
sauce, go ahead and reach out
No,
to
no,
it.
not on LinkedIn. Not on LinkedIn.
Yeah, not
Let's
on
not share
LinkedIn.
black hat LinkedIn stuff on LinkedIn.
Exactly. But they're like
Cold
anything.
email us. Cold email us.
Yeah, cold email us. It's like anything. Like I remember when I was in the affiliate marketing space back in like 2014, like there was always black hat tactics. Like how do you run more ads on Facebook, for example, without getting caught by
Yeah.
Facebook, right? There's always like SEO. It's like the old, what was it, the penguin slap or whatever it
Yeah, yeah,
was, like where
yeah.
people used to stuff keywords in and like just write like, you know, like lawnmower like 1,000 times to get ranked for
Yeah.
lawnmower. So I think as long as human nature exists, there's going to be somebody trying to take advantage of a system. But fundamentally, that's the
Cool.
constraint of LinkedIn is that there's a lack of uh, message bandwidth. You can't send that much volume.
No, what we're seeing with tools like K-Reach is that if you have a large BDR team, you can connect their profiles and you can send about 800 800 connection requests and then follow-up messages, or every profile is reaching out to 800 people. So if you have 10 team members that you can connect their LinkedIn profiles, you're essentially getting bandwidth to send
Mhm.
messages to 8,000 people. So it can scale that way, but it requires that people have polished LinkedIn profiles and obviously that your ICP lives on LinkedIn
Mm.
and they're, open to it. So it does work that way. But I agree with you. To what you said before, I'd say there's a reason why there's a special place in hell for marketers right next to lawyers,
Yeah.
because marketers ruin every single good new technology that we get. Like, I remember back in the day, messenger marketing was becoming a thing, and then Facebook saw it and just chopped it off. Every single new good channel would get, WhatsApp. It's like it's going there. Since they're opening up the API now, it's going to be quite big for B2B marketing as well. We're going to be testing a few campaigns in the MENA region where, the use of WhatsApp is actually considered a must for business practices. They don't use Slack or emails as much as they use WhatsApp. So being agile with the channels that you use and being able to know what the latest and greatest kind of hacks or shortcuts are is what it is one of the key elements that makes your campaign succeed. If you have that and you have product market fit and you're willing to test, then you have a lot more chances of succeeding.
Mm. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it is kind of always being ahead of the curve, which is like I
Yeah.
kind of partially why like I think Clay is what it has done so well is that for the people that adopted it, it allows you to do kind of this strange new world thing of enrich and track signals and just data in general in a way that wasn't possible before. Um, and so, I just believe the future is all about data collection. It's all about the data enrichment. It's all about creating your. This actually gets to a point, which is like, why is it that most cold email agencies just rescrape the world every single time? Like what? Like I've noticed. Obviously, I'm biased because I own a company that sells database technology to cold email agencies for the purpose of doing what I'm about to ask.
Mhm.
So let me put that like big like caveat out there. But why is it that cold email agencies just rescrape the same TAM every time? They'll go to a client, they'll scrape, say SaaS founders in North America, and then 2 months later, client comes out, they'll go straight back to Apollo and they'll rescrape the entire list. And then they'll re-enrich, they lose all the Clay credits. Do you think that's ignorance or why do you think guys are doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not doing it to that extent.
Hmm.
When we have clients, I think it also has to do with, are you strategic about how or where you get clients from? Like for us, it's been Nudstech because one of our first clients was in the edtech space. We were really successful with our campaigns, still working together. They referred us to a bunch of other companies. We referred us to a bunch of other companies, and we ended up, with a deep expertise in a few sectors, including edtech. So reusing lists in that kind of sense, like advertising agencies in the US, like we have the list, we've gone through it. Maybe once in a while, we'll check if there's a new company and enrich and add it, because obviously new agencies have, the we can allow other companies to exist in the business, but yeah, it's not ideal if you're constantly scraping different niches. So if you're building a business and you see that you're successful in one space, an agency in our space, let's say, why not reach out to other companies in the same space and get them as clients?
Mm-hmm.
Because you already have the list, you already know the lingo,
Mm-hmm.
you've already run successful campaigns once, you know what offer works, and you can do it again and again and again. So I think it's also going back to what we were discussing before is like, are you in it because you love outbound or are you in it because you want to build a business? Because for me, like the amount of things that I thought were, oh yeah, you just run a business. And the amount of times we kept failing with the business model itself, with how we price, with how we get clients to be successful, with how we get to retain them, had absolutely nothing to do about outbound. And unless I was willing to step out of my comfort zone and learn these things, we wouldn't have a business. And that's where I think like it's not just enough to be an expert at outbound. You also have to want to grow a business. You also have to want to grow, want to deliver good service, because it takes so many other systems and processes and grit, amongst other things, in order to be able to do it successfully.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you're running a business and you're successful in one industry, why not attract more businesses from the same industry? Obviously, you need good database tools so you're not constantly scraping the same audience because it's dumb. But also, why not focus your work?
Mhm. Yeah, I believe that the cold email, this is my contrarian take. Uh, I believe that the cold email agencies that survive in the long run are doing exactly what you're describing, which is they find a vertical or some verticals where they double down on a particular industry and they become subject matter experts in that industry. So they know the copy better than everyone. It's kind of the same reason I had to go 2 years into the desert on oil and gas, right? It's because you know the copy better, you know what the hooks work, you know what the offers are, and you're always on the cutting edge of whatever that messaging is. And so, of course, if you go find, say, the top 30 of that type of client, everyone starts talking about your results. And so they're like, well,
Yeah,
hell, like I want to work with this guy too. We have found that, I'm not going to say it on air, but we have found our niche where it's like, if we get this client, they crush and they love us and we have a lot of testimonials. And so for me, like, the whole idea of what I think needs to happen is the agency needs to become a curator of this data. And so they have to be building this master database. And I think what's going to happen with all agencies is they're going to have their own set of data that's enriched with replies, with signals, with post lead capture outcomes like meeting sets and deals won and actual revenue. But the key value prop is not just that you have a moat because you've served these particular people before, but it's because you actually have a data set that's fundamentally better than any data set you can scrape elsewhere, you know? And that's a key asset in my opinion. And it's
yeah.
shocking to me that most agencies don't think about it like that. Um,
The other thing we've done around it is we're building teams within the agency,
hmm,
our specific go-to-market teams that specialize in specific verticals. So now if someone comes to us from the fintech space or the outtech space or a few spaces we specialize in, like we know exactly the go-to-market strategist, we know the team, they have the data sets already mapped out, they know what messaging has worked, they know what partnership campaigns work, they know what doesn't work, so they can already, because the other thing is like, okay, how do you define the niches and the ICPs? Like, do you go by job title? Do you go by company type? Do you go by industry? And there's so many different ways to, even just to do the targeting part, not to mention how to create the offer and how to make the emails. You then have, based on the industry, emails being longer, being better, emails being shorter, being better. Like we were seeing in traditional industries, for example, just to give away some knowledge, longer emails actually work better,
hmm,
contrary to the popular belief that you have to have shorter emails. So we're seeing that if we're talking to lawyers, universities, like old school kind of people, they
hmm,
expect to see longer emails.
hmm,
Another unpopular thing that we do, and I'm going to give it away, is we include, hey, I am X, Y, and Z, and I'm reaching out on behalf of X, Y, and Z company.
hmm,
And to people that are unaware of mass outbound and who are not getting bombarded, if you're not a B2B SaaS founder or a software founder, or if you don't belong to a traditional space, they actually respond really well to it because they assume it's a traditional BDR or a one-on-one conversation taking place.
hmm.
So
That's
they actually
fascinating.
appreciate that. And it was one of the things that didn't have to do with AI, didn't have to do with relevance, didn't have to do with personalization, that completely skyrocketed our results in a specific campaign.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I when it comes to copywriting, I just tell the guys like I'm like, look, read every word. It's kind of like the story I said earlier. Read every word and ask why is this word here? Like, can you say it in less words? Can you say it in more words? What else can you add that's actually valuable? And this gets back to old school copywriting. I mean, we're not breaking ground here. I think Dan
No,
Kennedy and all these other guys just, beat this dead horse. Go read what's the famous letters, the guy that wrote it from jail.
Colbert letters.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anyways, it's like read all the great copywriters. They all say the same thing.
Yeah.
Create a slippery slope. Every first sentence needs to read to the second sentence. And it's like, it's basic copywriting. But I think what happens, and the reason good copy will still win, is that everybody's just chat GPTing it. So it's like they're
Yeah.
just blasting crap into the world. And so if you just have like a very nicely written, good copy to the right offer, you'll win. And as long as you don't do something stupid on your deliverability side, like sending 500 emails from the same primary domain. So I know we've been on for a little while here. I'm curious, what other key, before we jump off, what other key like insights do you think you'd like to pass to, whether it's the community or just like the market in general? Any predictions, any thoughts, anything else you want to add?
I'd say the success of it goes back to three things that we've been discussing over and over. It's like targeting, who are you reaching out to, messaging, what are you saying? And that obviously includes the offer. And then deliverability, how do you ensure the email goes to the right folder, let's say the primary tab. So a lot of times people ask me, what if it doesn't work? Well, for me, success is, are you able to point out which of the three is the one that's actually preventing your campaigns from working?
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to present a credible answer and a credible solution, A/B test, experiment, whatever it is, so that you can go around it. So ultimately, what I would say to anyone who wants to be successful with it, it's not like whether outbound works or not as a channel, but whether you can convince someone that you know that even in the worst case scenario, you'll be able to identify what it is that's not working and be able to provide a fix for it. That's it. Because I'm, seeing it in the industry. I'm sometimes seeing it when we hire someone new. They're like, "Oh my god, the campaign isn't working." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Which part? What about it isn't working?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back at it, and then let's go to the drawing board and see what can we brainstorm." Because and the other thing is, the last thing is, targeting is more important than messaging, is more important than deliverability, because you can try and sell a fridge to an Eskimo, but and you can use the most fancy copywriter, you can use Dan Candidate's copy, you can use ChatGPT, but you're not going to be as effective as if you try to sell the exact same fridge to someone in the middle of the desert holding an ice cream cone that's melting. If in that case, even if you just say fridge, $1,000, the guy will just grab it from you and run and put the ice cream cone in it. So
Mm-hmm.
as AI allows us to write more and more elaborate copy, the ability to target the right people is going to become, and also have messaging that's relevant to the people you're targeting, is going to be fundamental to the whole process. It's why we had people building and reviewing lists by hand in 2023. It's why we use Clay and we invest on ChatGPT and AI, not to be able to write fancy copy, but to be able to validate that we're talking to the right person. And then if we know what to say, it's going to work. And then deliverability itself is not an issue. Deliverability becomes an issue when your targeting and messaging are not aligned, when you're saying the wrong thing to the wrong person or the wrong thing to the right person.
Mm-hmm.
That's when deliverability is an issue.
I
So I'd
have
say, focus on the basics. There's no reason why it shouldn't work.
I have a whole thing called the what matters diagram. And on the left hand side of the diagram, in my mind, I can't remember if it's on the right or the left. Go on the right side of the diagram, there's the sales rep. And I get a lot of people come to me and say, my sales team isn't performing, and I'm not doing well right now because my guys aren't closing deals. And so I'm like, okay, that's what you think your problem is. And I went to, I'm sure you know Alex Ramosi, and I went to his in-person. I live in Las Vegas, so I went to his in-person event. I think see, it's called this one. I'm going to plug Alex Ramosi, the scaling workshop. And you get this, this big thing, and they have you fill out a bunch of stuff. But the number one point of the workshop was the role of a CEO is to identify the biggest constraint in the business and apply resources to solve for that constraint. It's like the number one purpose. And same thing in sales and marketing. When I'm looking at this what matters diagram, which is salespeople on the right, the least thing that matters, and ICP on the left, the most thing that matters. And then you have, to the right of that, you have like, well, is the market big enough? And is there demand, and do you have a lot of competition? And then you have your offer, and then you have your, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have your demand channels and blah, 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 your sales team, your sales operations process? But like everything from right to left, if anything to the left is broken, everything to the right will suffer. So if your sales process
Yeah,
sucks, your sales rep will suck. If your offer is bad, well, you're probably not going to do well with your demand gen channels because you're pitching the wrong thing,
exactly.
you know? So yeah, but ICP, I mean, you nailed it. It's like, it's so basic, but if you're just talking to the wrong person, it doesn't matter. Um, and I think I think a good place to leave it is, have you read Four Steps to the Epiphany, Steve Blank, by any chance?
Yeah.
How about a Lean Startup? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. So Lean Startup was Eric Rice. His mentor
Yeah.
was Steve Blank. And so he met Steve at Stanford. And Steve wrote this book called Four Steps to the Epiphany, which is like literally like the 4 steps to having the breakthrough idea that makes you the $1 billion company. So it's more of like a hand manual to the Lean Startup, where the Lean Startup is more of kind of like a lighter touch, more easy read. Um, but his whole point was, he has a story where he talks about, like, he had a VP of sales who kept on going and pitching whatever thing he was pitching. And the VP of sales kept on getting rejected. And Steve was like, he's like, this guy keeps on just saying, no, we're going to do it. We're going to overcome this. We're just going to get better at our pitch. And Steve was like, at that moment, I knew I had to fire my VP of sales. And the moral of the story was, if you keep on pitching the same thing over and over again and you keep getting rejected and there's not some level of traction, then you either have the wrong offer in the right person or the right offer in the wrong person. And you got to switch one of them, right? And it could be both. Like maybe the offer just absolutely sucks and nobody will ever buy whatever
Yeah.
stupid thing you're building. So for me, that's like a key thing I look for is like, do you have a good offer? Are you talking to the right person? Do you have enough people to sell to? And do they find your offer compelling enough to solve a problem big
Exactly.
enough? That's what it comes down to. Cool, man. Well, where can people find you? Obviously, they can buy the book. I'm going to plug it again for you. Cool Email Secrets. You got Bill Stathopoulos, and you can find this on Amazon. That's where I bought this. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. If you're into outbound, go to market, cold email, fun memes. Otherwise, Instagram for more fun stuff, travels behind the scenes, what we're doing at the agency, sharing a few inner secrets. These are the 2 places I'm in online.
Cool.
Most of the stuff is either, if it's personal, it's on Instagram. If it's business, it's outbound, it's on LinkedIn.
Anybody listening, I'm going to put some links in the show notes below, so you can go find Bill on LinkedIn as well as his website. But definitely go check out the book. Definitely an interesting read, especially if you're getting into cold email. But it's been a pleasure having you on. Hopefully we get to do it again. Are you going to
Likewise, man.
Sculpt by any chance?
Of course I am. We're going to be hosting a few workshops there. We're going to be hosting a Clay Club SF event while on SF, and also I'm going to be speaking at Inbound. So September is going to be a busy month.
Cool. Well, I definitely have to shake your hand when we get over there. So, well,
Let's
signing
make
out,
it happen.
guys. Thanks so much, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Next Gen Sales Leaders.